Welcome back to the channel. In our fourth Java interview prep video, we are tackling 17 essential exception handling questions. If you are new here, we have previously covered 8 core fundamentals, around 22 OOP concepts, and 10 string class questions. Links are in the description. Let's dive straight into exception handling, a critical and important topic from an interview perspective. So the basic question would be, what is an exception and how it is different from an error? So an exception is a condition which occurs during execution of the program and it disrupts the normal flow of the program. If it is not handled properly, it can cause the program to terminate abnormally. There are two types of exception. First is checked exception, another is unchecked exception. Checked exceptions are the type of exceptions which are checked at compile time and we have to specifically handle it using try and catch block. Unchecked exceptions are the exception that occurs at runtime. Now, how exception is different from an error? We cannot recover from errors, but we can recover from exception if it is handled properly. One question would be, explain the keywords which are used in exception handling. The keywords are try, catch, finally, throw, and throws. So first keyword is try. It basically means that we have to try all the statements in the block. Second keyword is catch. But if there is any exception in the try block, then it is catched and handled in the catch block. Finally, this block is basically used for cleanup activities like closing a connection object or prepared statement object, etc. This will execute always no matter what are the conditions. Throw. We can explicitly throw an exception using throw keyword. Throws. Whenever we throw an exception inside a method, we can also declare it in the method telling that this method throws exception. So one question would be, explain the hierarchy of exception class, or which class is the parent of exception class. So we can see here throwable class is the topmost class in the hierarchy of exception. From throwable we can see error and exception. In error we are having out of memory error and stack overflow error. These are some heap and stack overflow errors. In exception we can see there are two types of exception, that is checked exception and runtime exception. In checked exception we are having IO exception, class not found, clone not supported, EUF, file not found, malform URL, unknown host, etc. Runtime exception we are having arithmetic exception, class cast exception, illegal argument exception. Then we have index out of bound. In index out of bound also we might have array out index out of bound and string index out of bound. We are having no such element exception, null pointer exception, etc. And even the parent class of throwable is the object class, which is the topmost class in any hierarchy. One of the important question is how to create our own custom exception class. So if we want to create our own custom exception class, we need a class which extends either exception or runtime exception class. Example is given below. Public class my exception. This is the our own custom exception class. It is extending exception class. We are using the constructor of this class and we are accepting one message. Using super keyword we are calling the constructor of exception class and we are passing the message as the parameter. This is the most basic example of creating our own exception class. Now another question could be, what is the difference between extending exception and runtime exception class? So whenever we extend the exception class, we create a checked exception. This means the compiler forces the calling code to either catch the exception or declare it in the method using throws clause. And whenever we extend the runtime exception class, we can create an unchecked exception. The compiler does not require the calling code to handle or declare these exceptions. This is one of the most important question. What should be the order of catching the exceptions if there are multiple exceptions to be catched? So we have to always take care that we have to catch more specialized exception first and then the generalized ones. This means the subclasses should be caught before their parent classes. If a parent exception like exception is caught before a child like arithmetic exception, then the child catch block becomes unreachable and it results into a compile time error. This is one of the tricky question, that can we have a try block without a catch block? Yes, we can have a try block without a catch block in two conditions. Either if we are having try with resources or we are having try with a finally block. So this is another tricky question, that if there is an exception in the try block and a return statement in the catch block, then will the finally block be executed? So the answer to this question will be yes, the finally block will always be executed. Then there might be a counter question, that what are the conditions in which finally block is not executed? So below are the two conditions in which finally blocks are not executed. First is the system crashes before reaching to the finally block, or there is specifically system.exit written in the code, either in the try block or the catch block. In these two conditions only, finally block will not be executed, else it will always be executed. Uh, can we catch, another question is, can we catch multiple exception in a single catch statement? Yes, from Java onwards we are having a provision to catch multiple exception in a single catch statements. Each exception is separated by the pipe variable. The multiple exception, this is one important thing to note, that the multiple exceptions should be either all checked exception or unchecked exception. So this is the one example of catching multiple exception together. There is a try block. In the catch block, we can see there is one IO exception. It is separated by a pipe, and there is SQL exception, and both are catch in the EX variable. These both are already a checked exception, so we can club them together and use them. So there should not be any case like where we are having IO exception, a pipe, and then null pointer exception, since both the types are different. So either we should have all checked exception or all unchecked exception. This is one of the important question. What is try with resources and what is the benefit of this? So we can pass resources as a parameter to the try. This is the answer of what is try with resources. We can see with the example here. We are having a try block. In the parameter we are creating one connection object, and we are using this try block. But this resource, whatever the resource which we are using here, like connection or prepared statement, this should be auto closable. So we cannot use a resource here which is not auto closable. So what is the advantage of it? The advantage of using try with resources is that we do not have to close this resource, and it will be closed automatically. Also, the resources are closed in the reverse order of their creation. So the resources which is created first will be closed last. We can also have multiple resources as well in the single try statement. This is one more tricky question. Can we have exception in the finally block? Yes, we can have exceptions in the finally block, but if there is an exception occurring in the finally block, then it replaces any exception which is thrown in the try block. One question asked can be, what is exception chaining? So whenever an exception occurs in a lower level method, instead of directly propagating it, we can catch it and wrap it in a new exception that's more relevant to the current context, and then this new exception is thrown. What is exception propagation? So if an exception is not caught in the current method, it is propagated up the call stack until it is getting caught or it reaches the main method. So if a method throws an unchecked exception, thus the place where it is called should also throw that same exception, or it is fine not to throw. So no, there is no need for calling method to throw the same exception, but the same is not true in the case of checked exception. So if a method is throwing checked exception, we have to declare it in the method signature that this method throws xyz checked exception. How does Next question is, how does exception handling work with method overriding, particularly regarding checked exception? So when overriding a method, the overriding method cannot throw the checked exception that are broader than those declared by the overridden method. So what it can throw? It can throw the same exceptions, It can throw narrower, that is more specific or more specialized exception. It can throw fewer exception, or it cannot throw any exception at all. But the same condition are not true for unchecked exception. For unchecked exceptions, there are no restrictions on this. This is again one of the important question which was asked personally in interview to me. What if there is a method which is having a throw statement in the try block, the catch for the same is in the catch block, and also there is a throw statement in the catch block, and there is also a throw statement in the finally block, then the method will throw exception from which block and why. So when an exception is thrown in the finally block, it overrides and suppresses any exception thrown from the try or catch blocks. The exception from the finally block is the one that propagates out of the method, and any previous exceptions are lost unless explicitly handled or locked before the finally block throws its own exception. This wraps up our 17 exception handling interview questions. Drop your experiences in comments. Which questions surprised you? Hit the like button if you learned something from this video, and subscribe for upcoming videos on crucial interview topics like multithreading, collection frameworks, etc. Thanks.